Hey everyone, and welcome to the channel. Today we're diving deep into one of the most pivotal and action-packed eras in Star Wars history, the Clone Wars. This isn't just a simple conflict between good and evil. It's a complex, multi-layered saga that redefined heroes, forged villains, and ultimately laid the groundwork for the Galactic Empire. From the emergence of iconic characters like Ahsoka Tano and Captain Rex, to the terrifying return of Darth Maul and the heartbreaking fall of the Jedi Order, we're going to journey through every major event, every crucial battle, and every personal sacrifice that shaped this galactic-spanning war. So grab your popcorn, prepare for hyperspace, and let's unravel the entire timeline of the Clone Wars. Before the Clone Wars scorched the galaxy and reshaped the fate of the Republic, a quiet deception was already unfolding in the shadows. The story of the clone army's creation is one of secrecy, manipulation, and betrayal, set decades before the first battle even began. And to understand how a galactic conflict like the Clone Wars could begin so suddenly, we must go back to the quiet halls of the Jedi Temple and the dreams of a single Jedi Master. His name was Sifo Dyas. Sifo Dyas was a Jedi Master known for his unconventional insight and prophetic visions. Long before war gripped the galaxy, Sifo Dyas foresaw something disturbing. He sensed the coming conflict, a time when the Republic would be in grave danger. While other Jedi dismissed these visions as anxiety or imagination, Sifo Dyas took them seriously. He believed that the Republic would need an army, not to conquer, but to defend itself. Yet, at that time, the Jedi served as peacekeepers, not generals. And the Republic had no official standing army. The very notion of raising a military force was controversial, even dangerous. It could be interpreted as a political power grab. The Jedi Council forbade it. But Sifo Dyas couldn't let go of what he saw in his visions. The rising darkness, the chaos, the war. And so, he acted in secret. At some point around 32 BBY, roughly a decade before the Clone Wars would begin, Sifo Dyas commissioned a clone army from the cloners on the planet Kamino. He did this outside the authority of the Republic. He erased Kamino from the Jedi archives so the planet would remain hidden. And he provided the Kaminoans with the genetic template for the army, a bounty hunter named Jango Fett. Fett was a Mandalorian by creed, a ruthless and highly skilled warrior who had made a name for himself across the Outer Rim. He was paid handsomely for his DNA and agreed to serve as the template for the entire Grand Army of the Republic. In exchange, he asked for only one thing, an unaltered clone of himself, a son. The Kaminoans delivered. That child would be named Boba Fett. But this is where the story becomes more sinister. Though Sifo Dyas initiated the clone army, he did not live to see it finished. Unbeknownst to the Jedi, he had become a pawn in a far deeper game. Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord who secretly operated as Senator Palpatine of Naboo, had taken notice of Sifo Dyas' plan. Working with his new apprentice, Darth Tyrannus, better known as Count Dooku, Sidious orchestrated Sifo Dyas' death. Some reports say he died in a shuttle crash arranged by Dooku. Others hint at darker means. Either way, once Sifo Dyas was gone, the Sith took control of the clone army project. Dooku assumed Sifo Dyas' identity in the eyes of the Kaminoans and continued the development of the army, but with one chilling modification, a secret programming directive known as Order 66. Order 66 was a command encoded into every clone's behavioral biochip, an order that, when executed, would cause them to turn on their Jedi commanders and eliminate them without hesitation. The clones were never told about this programming. Most never suspected it, and the Jedi never saw it coming. To the Kaminoans, who prized loyalty and obedience in their cloning practices, this directive was just another aspect of military efficiency. They were told the Jedi would eventually betray the Republic. They were told the clones must be ready. But the Kaminoans were not Sith. They were scientists, cold and distant, yes, but unaware of the deeper game being played. As the years passed, the clones were bred, trained, and conditioned on Kamino. The cloning facilities operated in secret, funded by Sith resources, and hidden from the Republic. The clones grew at an accelerated rate, reaching maturity in just 10 years. They were raised to be obedient, efficient, and loyal to the Republic. They trained with elite instructors, including Jango Fett himself, who taught them survival, marksmanship, and combat tactics. Their armor, white, segmented, and inspired by ancient Mandalorian designs, was forged for the battlefield. Meanwhile, in the halls of Coruscant, the Republic grew more unstable. Corruption festered in the Senate. Outer Rim systems began to secede. Count Dooku, once a Jedi Master, now led the Confederacy of Independent Systems, a separatist movement fueled by economic unrest and political disillusionment. The galaxy teetered on the brink of chaos. And then, war. In 22 BBY, Jedi Knight Obi-Wan Kenobi discovered the clone army while tracking a bounty hunter, Jango Fett, to Kamino. Obi-Wan was stunned. The Jedi Council was stunned. No one had authorized this army. No one knew it existed. Yet there it was. Millions of soldiers, ready for battle. The Kaminoans explained it had been ordered by Master Sifo-Dyas on behalf of the Republic. Before the Council could investigate further, war erupted on Geonosis. Jedi had walked into a trap, surrounded by thousands of battle droids built by the Separatists. They were moments from annihilation, until Yoda arrived with the clone army. The Republic accepted the army, though questions remained. Who truly ordered it? Why had it been hidden? What was the role of Jango Fett? And most importantly, what were the consequences of using a military force born in secrecy and deception? The Jedi, desperate to protect the Republic, became generals, something they were never meant to be. And with the clones by their side, they marched into the fires of the Clone Wars. The creation of the clone army was not just the beginning of a war, it was the execution of a plan crafted over decades by Darth Sidious. Every step, every decision, every secret, carefully orchestrated to destabilize the Republic, corrupt the Jedi, and pave the way for the rise of the Empire. The clone army was not just a military force. It was a Trojan horse, loyal, brave, and deeply tragic. Soldiers who fought for peace, but were engineered for betrayal. And so, as the first transports departed Kamino, as clone troopers donned their helmets and loaded their blasters, the stage was set. The Clone Wars had begun. As the galaxy drifted into the early years of decline, another shadow grew quietly across the stars. While the Republic stagnated in political gridlock and corruption, thousands of systems, worlds spread across the Mid-Rim, Outer Rim, and beyond, began to question the legitimacy of their government. The result would be the formation of a movement that would fracture galactic unity and lead to the most widespread conflict in galactic history. This was the Separatist movement. At first, the discontent seemed harmless. Senators voiced concerns over bloated bureaucracy. Trade routes were blocked by special interest groups. Planetary systems complained about neglect, taxation without adequate support, and a lack of military protection from pirates and local warlords. Many of these grievances had been ignored for decades. Outer Rim systems in particular were used to the Republic, taking their resources, but rarely their concerns. Into this unrest stepped a figure who had once walked among the Jedi, Count Dooku. Dooku had once been a respected Jedi Master, trained by Yoda himself. He was wise, eloquent, and charismatic. But over time, he became disillusioned with the Jedi Council's increasing passivity and its alliance with a corrupt Republic. After the death of his former Padawan, Qui-Gon Jinn, Dooku's disillusionment deepened. He quietly left the Jedi Order, becoming one of the Lost 20, a rare group of Jedi who voluntarily resigned. To the public, Dooku became a statesman and idealist. He claimed he wanted to restore order and fairness to the galaxy. To those who felt abandoned by the Republic, he became a voice of reason. And to the countless systems eager for reform, he became something more, a symbol of hope. Behind the scenes, however, Count Dooku had already fallen to the dark side. Under the new name Darth Tyrannus, he had become the apprentice of Darth Sidious, carrying out a plan that would one day destroy the Jedi and bring the Republic to its knees. But for now, Dooku's focus was simple: divide the galaxy. The Confederacy of Independent Systems, known as the Separatists, was born from this slow-burning rebellion. It was a coalition of thousands of star systems and powerful corporations. The Trade Federation, the Techno Union, the Banking Clan, the Commerce Guild, and the Corporate Alliance. These groups were enticed by Dooku's promises of deregulation, fewer Republic taxes, and increased autonomy. They saw profit in war and power in rebellion. Each brought their own military forces and resources. The Trade Federation controlled vast fleets and droid armies. The Techno Union contributed experimental technology and weaponry. The Banking Clan provided the credits to fund a growing war machine. On the surface, they were allies of convenience. But in truth, each was secretly manipulated by Dooku, who was in turn controlled by Sidious. The goal was never truly independence. It was chaos. The Separatist movement spread rapidly. Entire sectors pledged allegiance to Dooku. Some planets left willingly. Others were coerced or bribed. On planets like Raxus, Sereno, and Sullust, Dooku held grand assemblies, speaking of freedom from Republic tyranny. Many believed him. Many wanted out. Meanwhile, the Republic faltered. The Senate grew paranoid, fearful of losing control. Some senators, like Bail Organa and Mon Mothma, urged negotiation and diplomacy. Others, like Masa Meta and Palpatine, advocated for stronger central power and emergency measures. Peace talks failed. Compromise evaporated. The Jedi, caught in the middle, struggled to keep the peace. They were diplomats first, not warriors. But as the Separatists grew bolder, the Jedi were stretched thin across the galaxy, intervening in crisis after crisis with fewer resources and increasing political pressure. Their role as neutral peacekeepers was dissolving, replaced by the creeping specter of militarization. What most did not realize, what few could even imagine, was that both sides of the conflict were controlled by the same hand. Darth Sidious, still acting as Supreme Chancellor Palpatine in the Republic Senate, masterfully orchestrated every development. While Dooku stirred unrest among the Separatists, Palpatine manipulated the Senate into granting him more power. Each side escalated the tension, pushing the galaxy toward inevitable war. And then, as if on cue, the Separatists began deploying droid armies. They were vast and uniform. Endless legions of battle droids, cheap, mechanical, replaceable, marched under the Separatist banner. Manufactured on planets like Geonosis, the droids did not tire. They did not question. They overwhelmed planets through sheer numbers. For the Republic, which had no official standing army, this threat was catastrophic. Star systems began falling to Separatist control. Entire trade routes were cut off. Local governments collapsed under pressure. And in the Senate, fear took root. It was in this atmosphere of desperation that Supreme Chancellor Palpatine quietly laid the groundwork for the next phase of his plan, the acceptance of a secret clone army. By the time Obi-Wan Kenobi discovered the clone army on Kamino, the galaxy was already teetering on the brink. The Separatists had pushed hard. The Jedi were overstretched. The Senate was panicked, and the Republic needed soldiers. Count Dooku, the charismatic leader of the Separatists, claimed the Jedi were corrupt. He said they had been compromised, that they were the ones manipulating the Senate. Many believed him. Some Jedi even began to wonder if he was right. But it was all part of the illusion. In truth, Dooku knew about the clone army. He had helped design it. He knew that once war began, both sides would bleed. Both sides would weaken. And when the time was right, the Sith would strike. And so the galaxy entered the final phase before war. The Separatists had risen. Their droid armies spread like wildfire. The Republic was backed into a corner, clinging to emergency powers and secret armies. And across the stars, the Jedi unknowingly prepared to fight a war they had already lost. The Separatist movement was never about freedom. It was the perfect lie. And beneath it all, the drums of war began to sound. The moment the Clone Wars truly began, the moment the galaxy crossed a point of no return, was on a dusty, red planet in the Outer Rim. A world of spires and hives, of buzzing wings and secret factories. It was here, on Geonosis, that the Jedi would fight not to preserve peace, but to survive. And so, we begin with a transmission. In the year 22 BBY, Jedi Knight Obi-Wan Kenobi was investigating the mysterious plot to assassinate Senator Padme Amidala. That investigation had led him from Kamino, where he discovered the hidden clone army, to the arid surface of Geonosis, a planet shrouded in secrecy. There, hidden within the planet's canyons and tunnels, he discovered a massive droid foundry and a meeting of Separatist leaders. Count Dooku, the enigmatic figurehead of the Separatist movement, had gathered representatives from the galaxy's most powerful corporate alliances. The Techno-Union, the Banking Clan, the Commerce Guild, the Trade Federation. They were there to pledge their battle droid armies and economic might to Dooku's cause. War was no longer a threat. It was a decision. Obi-Wan transmitted the information back to Coruscant. But before he could escape, he was captured by Geonosian warriors and imprisoned deep within the planet's hive-like catacombs. The Jedi Council knew they had to act. Obi-Wan's life was in danger, and the Separatists were preparing for open conflict. But Obi-Wan was not alone for long. His Padawan, Anakin Skywalker, disobeyed orders and traveled to Geonosis with Senator Padme Amidala. They too were captured, and soon, the three of them, Jedi Knight, Padawan, and Senator, stood side by side in the center of the Geonosian execution arena. High above, Count Dooku watched with silent detachment. Around them, thousands of Geonosians buzzed with anticipation. Three terrifying creatures were released, a Reek, an Acklay, and a Nexu, each designed to make the Jedi's final moments public and painful. And yet, they survived. Obi-Wan held his own against the Acklay's claws. Padme climbed atop the towering pillar and fought back with chains. Anakin rode the massive Reek, breaking its will. And just as the beast closed in again, the Jedi arrived. From every direction, dozens of Jedi ignited their lightsabers, a rainbow of blades cutting through the dust and chaos. Led by Mace Windu, they charged into the arena. A battle erupted, Jedi against droid, warrior against machine, as the Geonosians panicked and fled. And then the real army arrived. The skies of Geonosis filled with the roar of engines. Republic gunships descended from orbit, pouring clone troopers onto the battlefield in perfect formation. Commanded by Jedi generals and coordinated through newly developed tactics, the clones took to the fight without hesitation. White-armored troopers advanced through the desert, firing at endless ranks of battle droids. AT walkers crushed the rocky terrain. LAT gunships swooped down from the skies, ferrying Jedi into the thick of the fight. It was organized, precise, efficient, and yet tragic. This was not how the Jedi were meant to serve. They had trained for diplomacy, mediation, and wisdom, not war. And though they fought with courage and conviction, there was an unease among them. Something was wrong. Something about this conflict, its suddenness, its scale, its convenience, felt manufactured. Still, there was no turning back. The battle raged across the plains of Geonosis. Clone troopers surged forward in wave after wave. Droids fell in droves, only to be replaced. In the skies above, starfighters dueled across the clouds. Jedi led squads through the catacombs, disabling key production hubs. And amidst the chaos, Count Dooku fled. Anakin and Obi-Wan pursued him through ancient corridors, eventually cornering him in a darkened hangar. Dooku, now wielding a crimson lightsaber, easily overpowered the two Jedi. He struck Anakin down with Force lightning, then wounded Obi-Wan with clean, deliberate strikes. But before Dooku could finish them, Master Yoda arrived. The battle between the former master and his lost apprentice was brief, but powerful. Dooku unleashed everything he had. Lightsaber strikes, force attacks, and even collapsing debris. Yoda, with serenity and grace, deflected every blow. But Dooku, cunning as ever, created a distraction, threatening the lives of Obi-Wan and Anakin, and used the moment to escape. The Republic declared victory on Geonosis. The droid factories were destroyed. The Separatist leadership had retreated. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the Jedi had commanded troops in open war. But victory came at a cost. Over 200 Jedi had entered the battle. Fewer than 30 emerged unharmed. Hundreds of clone troopers lay buried beneath the red sands. And the war was only just beginning. As the battle wound down, Chancellor Palpatine watched from Coruscant. From the Senate chamber, he gazed upon the clone army marching in formation, lined in perfect rows, ready to be deployed across the galaxy. And as he looked upon the grand army of the Republic, a faint smile crept across his face. Everything was going according to plan. The Jedi believed they had saved the Republic. But in truth, they had stepped into a war crafted by the Sith. A war where every move was already accounted for. A war where the Jedi would slowly be worn down, outmaneuvered, and ultimately betrayed. Geonosis was not just the first battle of the Clone Wars. It was a carefully constructed stage, a proving ground for clones, a test for the Jedi, and a curtain rising on a galaxy divided. The dust of Geonosis would settle. The red skies would clear. But the war that had begun that day would burn for years. And in that flame, the galaxy would be changed forever. With the Battle of Geonosis concluded, the Clone Wars had officially begun. But rather than a singular, contained front, the war rapidly spiraled outward, spreading like wildfire across the stars. The Separatist droid army, vast and manufactured by the millions, deployed to countless systems. In response, the Grand Army of the Republic launched its counteroffensive, dispatching Jedi-led clone forces to every corner of the galaxy. This section of the war, chaotic, sprawling, and unpredictable, saw dozens of smaller battles unfold across key systems. These early conflicts would shape the course of the war and forge the reputations of warriors who would soon become legends. The Battle of Christophsis, one of the first major engagements, was fought on Christophsis, a crystalline world caught between Republic loyalty and Separatist control. There, Jedi generals Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker led their forces into a prolonged standoff against Separatist droid armies under the command of General Wormloathsome. Republic forces were outgunned and under siege, surrounded in the city by droid columns. Supplies ran low. Troopers were weary. Yet the Jedi held the line, keeping morale high and organizing a counterattack. It was here that a new figure entered the war. A young Togruta Padawan named Ahsoka Tano, assigned to Anakin by Master Yoda himself. Though Anakin resisted having a Padawan at first, Ahsoka's bravery in Christophsis, helping to disable Separatist shield generators and restore momentum to the Republic, laid the foundation for a deep bond that would endure throughout the war. Together, their leadership pushed the Separatists back and ensured the first of many hard-won victories for the Republic. The invasion of Ryloth far from the core, the planet Ryloth, home to the Twi'lek species, had fallen under brutal occupation by the Separatists. Droids patrolled the streets. Families were imprisoned, and the local resistance was pushed to the brink. Recognizing the strategic value of Ryloth's location in the Outer Rim, the Republic launched a liberation campaign. The assault was divided into phases. First to break the Separatist blockade in orbit, then to land forces on the planet, and finally to liberate the capital city. Jedi generals Mace Windu, Aayla Secura, and Obi-Wan Kenobi each led different portions of the campaign. Alongside them, clone commanders like Commander Cody, Captain Rex, and Commander Bly executed complex ground strategies with unshakable loyalty and discipline. The liberation of Ryloth was costly, both in lives and in emotional toll. But in the end, the people were freed, and the Republic earned the allegiance of another Outer Rim system. Malevolence and the banking clan on the wealthy, fortified world of Malevolence, the Republic confronted the financial heart of the Separatist movement, the intergalactic banking clan, led by Jedi Master Coatimundi and a detachment of ARC troopers, elite clones trained for specialized missions. The Republic launched a precise strike to disable the Separatist financial control center. In the skies above, Anakin Skywalker led a starfighter squadron against Separatist Ace Dirge in a wave of enemy craft. It was one of Anakin's first true air battles, and it revealed both his brilliance as a pilot and his tendency to take dangerous risks. The Republic emerged victorious, crippling Separatist financial systems. But more importantly, Malevolence showed that war would not be confined to front lines. It would be fought in space, in cities, in deserts, and in boardrooms. Every battle counted. Every world mattered. The dark presence of Asajj Ventress, it was during these early campaigns that the Jedi first encountered Asajj Ventress, a dark acolyte trained by Count Dooku. Fierce, elegant, and fueled by hatred, Ventress carried twin red lightsabers and a thirst for Jedi blood. On planets like Yavin 4, Kamino, and Danton, she appeared as a whisper, striking down Jedi and slipping away into the shadows. She became a ghost in the Republic's war machine. Unpredictable, merciless, and elusive. Ventress wasn't a Sith, but she was powerful in the dark side, and Dooku's brutal training had shaped her into a living weapon. Her clashes with Obi-Wan and Anakin left physical and emotional scars that would deepen as the war dragged on. The war spreads to the Mid-Rim as battle lines shifted. The Republic launched an initiative called the Mid-Rim Offensive, aiming to take control of vital trade routes and supply lines. The strategy was simple in theory, but difficult in execution. The Separatists countered every move. Ambushes, blockades, and sabotage became common. Clones began to call it the meat grinder. Jedi Knights, once diplomats and scholars, now led siege after siege, commanding troops in swamp worlds, ice-covered valleys, and volcanic wastelands. Many Jedi began to question their new roles as generals. They had been trained to bring balance. But every battle seemed to push the galaxy further into chaos. The Battle of Kamino, the birthplace of the clone army, soon became a target. Count Dooku knew that destroying the cloning facilities would cripple the Republic's ability to reinforce its troops. In a daring assault, he sent a massive fleet, led by Ventress and General Grievous, to strike Kamino's capital, Topoka City. The storm-racked ocean world erupted in chaos. Waves crashed as droid transports descended from the sky, and clones, still in their training stages, rushed to defend their home. Jedi generals Shaak Ti, Anakin, and Obi-Wan coordinated the defense. Despite overwhelming odds, they repelled the attack, saving the cloning facilities from destruction. For many clones, this was the first time they fought not just for the Republic, but for themselves. The battle reminded the galaxy of something profound. Though manufactured and bred for war, the clones were not mindless. They fought with purpose, pride, and unity. A war without rest, these early conflicts set the tone for the rest of the Clone Wars. Fast-moving, wide-reaching, and relentless. Systems would fall, rise, and fall again. New commanders emerged. New alliances were forged and broken. But the pattern remained, devastation without resolution. Each side traded victories, but the war never truly shifted. Palpatine, still acting as Chancellor, publicly promised swift victory. In private, he ensured the war would continue. For him, every battlefield was another step toward power, and so the fighting stretched on. Clone troopers adapted. New strategies were born. Jedi grew hardened, weary, and increasingly uncertain of their place in this new galaxy. And across the stars, citizens watched their homes turned into war zones, unsure if peace would ever return. But for now, they slept under the uneasy calm of military patrols and fading starlight, unsure what dawn would bring. The Clone Wars had begun as a single explosion on Geonosis. Now it echoed endlessly from the core to the farthest rim. As the Clone Wars consumed more and more of the galaxy, the Jedi Order was forced to make a fateful transformation. Once diplomats, scholars, and guardians of peace, the Jedi now became generals, warriors leading armies in a war few of them had asked for, and none of them truly understood. The Republic needed commanders, and the Jedi, bound by duty, answered the call. Each Jedi was assigned a clone legion, hundreds, sometimes thousands, of genetically bred soldiers. These clone troopers had been trained from birth to obey the chain of command, and for the Jedi, their presence was both a blessing and a burden. It was not natural for Jedi to command armies. Their lightsabers were symbols of justice, not conquest. But the galaxy had changed. The Jedi adapted because they had to. General Obi-Wan Kenobi and the 212th Attack Battalion Obi-Wan Kenobi was one of the first Jedi to embrace his role as a general. Calm, composed, and highly strategic, he quickly earned the respect of his men. He was assigned to lead the 212th Attack Battalion, a seasoned and disciplined clone unit often deployed in high-stakes missions. At Obi-Wan's side was Commander Cody, one of the Republic's most capable and loyal clone officers. Cody had a keen tactical mind and shared a deep bond with Kenobi. Together, they led sieges, liberated occupied systems, and brought stability where chaos threatened to spread. Their relationship was built on trust, Jedi and clone, equal in resolve. They communicated with silent glances, understood each other's instincts, and protected one another in the heat of battle. And yet, unknown to both, a shadow loomed, a future betrayal encoded in Cody's very DNA. But for now, they fought side by side. General Anakin Skywalker and the 501st Legion, if Obi-Wan represented the ideal Jedi general, careful, measured, and precise, Anakin Skywalker was the opposite. Bold, daring, and unpredictable. Anakin was assigned the 501st Legion, an elite group of clone troopers known for their versatility and resilience. Among them was Captain Rex, a loyal and thoughtful soldier who earned Anakin's trust and friendship early on. Anakin and Rex often fought on the front lines together, defying orders and forging their own paths through the war. They didn't always follow protocol, but they got results. Their bond extended beyond commander and soldier. They were brothers in arms, equals in the fire of combat. Anakin's unorthodox methods won battles, but they also raised questions. He trusted his instincts more than the council. He made decisions quickly, emotionally, and though he saved lives and won wars, the darkness within him grew slowly, like a storm on the horizon. For now, though, he was a hero of the Republic. General Aayla Secura and the 327th Star Corps on distant battlefields and jungle worlds, Jedi Master Aayla Secura led the 327th Star Corps. Calm, perceptive, and fiercely capable, Aayla was beloved by her troops. She led with grace, favoring cooperation and diplomacy when possible. Her commander, Bly, was precise and unflinching, a perfect counterpart to her measured leadership. They fought across worlds like Felucia and Quell, bringing order through sharp, efficient campaigns. Ayla's presence on the battlefield was a reminder that the Jedi were still guardians, not conquerors. She treated her clones with compassion, often walking among them rather than above them. General Kiadamundi and the Galactic Marines' Master Kiadamundi, a member of the Jedi Council, led campaigns on arid worlds like Megiddo. He was partnered with clone units like the Galactic Marines, hardened troops used in high-intensity assaults. His leadership was more formal, more distant. He believed in structure and clarity, commanding with a professor's discipline. And yet, he too began to question the nature of the war. What was victory in a galaxy unraveling so quickly? General Luminara Unduli and Commander Green Master Luminara Unduli, known for her deep spiritual discipline and wisdom, led alongside Commander Gree. She often trained her Padawan, Barriss Offee, in battlefield ethics, urging her to consider not just how to win, but why. They were stationed on worlds like Kashyyyk, coordinating operations with local populations and avoiding unnecessary bloodshed. Luminara embodied the Jedi ideal, even in war. But ideals alone could not stop what was coming. The brotherhood of Jedi and clones, as battles raged and days blurred together, the Jedi and their clones grew close. They ate together, slept under the same stars, fought and bled in the same trenches. They weren't just generals and soldiers, they were comrades. Clones, raised without parents, found mentors in their Jedi leaders. And Jedi, long taught to avoid attachment, found themselves bonded to the very beings they were told not to form emotional ties with. The Jedi began to see the clones as individuals, not products. Clones took names like Fives, Echo, Hardcase, and Dogma. They painted their armor, added personality, humor, and style to their helmets. They developed friendships and rivalries. They mourned their fallen. These were not blank slates. They were brothers, burdened by the code, yet the Jedi could not fully reconcile their new roles with the teachings they had followed since childhood. The Jedi Code discouraged attachment. It warned against emotion, against personal loyalty. But how could a Jedi lead soldiers in a battle, knowing many would die, without feeling grief? How could they become commanders of men and still walk the path of peace? Some, like Anakin, ignored the code. Others struggled silently. The council grew divided. Whispers of unease echoed through the temple. The Force itself fell quieter, and in the background, the war only deepened. A war that changed the Jedi forever. The Clone Wars did not just shape the galaxy. They reshaped the Jedi. Temples turned into command centers. Holocrons were replaced with battle plans. Meditative chambers echoed with war reports. Younglings learned battlefield medicine instead of philosophy. Every Jedi felt it. The war was changing them, and yet they pressed on. They believed that if they could win, if they could save the Republic, then maybe afterward they could rebuild. They could return to what they were. Guardians of peace, protectors of life. But the war had other plans. Across thousands of stars, clone legions followed their Jedi generals into fire. The bond they shared was forged in battle, in loyalty, and in moments of quiet reflection between missions. The Jedi led with honor. The clones followed with pride. And high above it all, Chancellor Palpatine watched, waiting. He knew the bond between Jedi and clone. He had engineered it, and he knew how to break it. They were born from a template, genetically identical soldiers bred for war. Each clone was created from the same source, the famed bounty hunter Jango Fett. They looked the same. They sounded the same. And to most of the galaxy, they were the same. But over time, as the Clone Wars unfolded across star systems and shadows, it became clear that they were not carbon copies. They were individuals. And at the heart of this quiet evolution stood one soldier, Captain Rex. From the very beginning, Rex was different. Assigned to Anakin Skywalker, Rex served not only as a commander in the 501st Legion, but also as a bridge between Jedi and clone. He fought in some of the war's most critical battles, Christophsis, Umbara, Kamino, and Mandalore. Through it all, he remained fiercely loyal, not just to the Republic, but to the men who served beside him. Rex wasn't born a leader. He became one, through experience, through pain, and through choice. In the early months of the war, clones were viewed as tools. Replaceable, efficient. There was little room for reflection in the midst of blaster fire and strategy briefings. But as battles grew bloodier and time passed, clones began to name themselves, to decorate their armor, to develop preferences. Some were louder. Others were thoughtful. Some questioned orders. Others lived for them. Rex's respect for individuality grew as he served alongside exceptional troopers. Men like Fives, Echo, Jesse, and Hardcase. These weren't just fellow soldiers. They were brothers. They were all created for the same purpose, but each one came to define himself in ways the Kaminoans never intended. Nowhere was this more evident than in the story of Fives. Fives, short for CT 27-5555, rose through the ranks from humble beginnings in Domino Squad, one of the most dysfunctional units on Kamino. But through sheer will and loyalty, Fives proved himself in combat, ultimately becoming an ARC trooper. He fought in vital battles across the galaxy and was present during the defense of Kamino against Separatist invasion. But Fives's most important contribution would come off the battlefield. Later in the war, after the mysterious death of Tup, another clone who suffered a sudden mental breakdown and murdered a Jedi during a mission, Fives began to investigate. What he uncovered was chilling. Tup's actions were not a fluke. They were part of a deeper program embedded within the clones themselves, a hidden command implanted via inhibitor chips. These chips, Fives discovered, were meant to control them. Fives pursued the truth relentlessly, even as he was stonewalled by Kaminoan medics and Republic officials. He grew paranoid, desperate, but he was right. The chips were real. His investigation nearly exposed Order 66 before it was executed. But he was silenced before he could share what he had learned. Framed as unstable, hunted, and eventually killed, Fives died with the knowledge that something was wrong, that the clones were part of a much darker plan. His final words haunted Rex. Find him. Fives. Find the truth. Rex never forgot. And when the time came, when the Force trembled and Order 66 was executed, Rex hesitated. His hands shook. His mind resisted. He fought the programming, tears in his eyes, as he turned his weapon toward Ahsoka Tano, the Jedi he had served with honor. Ahsoka, no longer a Jedi in name, felt something in Rex, something human. She spared him, removed his chip, and in doing so, helped him reclaim himself. But long before that final moment, Rex's sense of identity had been evolving. Unlike some clone commanders who strictly followed Republic protocol, Rex began to value independent thinking. He encouraged initiative. He challenged strategy when it endangered his men. He questioned decisions, even those made by his Jedi generals. One of the most striking examples came during the Battle of Umbara. Sent to seize a vital planet under heavy Separatist control, Rex and his troops were placed under the command of General Pong Krell, a cold and ruthless Jedi who saw the clones as expendable assets. Krell issued brutal, seemingly irrational orders. Waves of frontal assaults, unnecessary casualties, and callous disregard for life. The men began to suffer. Morale plummeted. And then, the unthinkable happened. Rex discovered that Krell had manipulated his clones into attacking each other, disguising squads as enemy forces. Brothers killed brothers in the fog. The betrayal was complete. When the truth emerged that Krell had fallen to the dark side and was sabotaging the Republic from within, Rex was forced to make a choice. For the first time in his life, he disobeyed a Jedi. He arrested Krell, and when the former general laughed at the clones, claiming they were incapable of acting without orders, Rex proved otherwise. The clones executed Krell, not out of revenge, but to stop the bloodshed. It was a grim moment, but it marked a turning point. The clones were more than soldiers. They were men who could choose. This evolution wasn't isolated to Rex. Commander Cody, who served under Obi-Wan Kenobi, also developed a distinct personality. He was efficient, loyal, and practical, but also sharp and commanding. He shared a bond with Obi-Wan, joking with him, trusting him. Yet when Order 66 came, Cody did not hesitate. The chip stripped him of choice. In that split second, the man who once laughed beside a Jedi raised a blaster and fired. The tragedy of the clones lies not in their loyalty, but in how it was twisted. They were designed to follow orders. But over the course of the war, they became more than designs. They told jokes. They painted their armor. They honored their fallen. They formed bonds with each other, with their Jedi generals, and with the people they fought to protect. They also struggled with their purpose. Was a clone only valuable on the battlefield? What happened when the war ended? Was there a future for them beyond combat? These questions lingered in quiet moments. Around campfires on remote planets, in medical bays, aboard starships between battles. Clones began to express hopes. Some imagined peace. Others feared they would be discarded once their usefulness ended. The Republic never had an answer. The war always came first. Captain Rex, through all of it, remained the heart of the clone identity. He balanced discipline with compassion. He led with courage, but also listened. He lost friends. He buried brothers. He saw the Jedi fall. But he never let the war define his soul. And in the end, when the galaxy turned to darkness, Rex found his own path. Not as a number, not as a soldier, but as a man, a brother, a friend, a free thinker. In the shadows between light and dark, among the forgotten stars and broken dreams of the galaxy, lived a woman forged by pain and sharpened by betrayal. Her name was Asajj Ventress, and her story was not one of simple villainy or redemption. It was a winding path of war, of identity, of heartbreak. A path walked alone. To the Republic and Jedi, Ventress was a threat, a killer, a dark side assassin. But to understand her fully, we must begin at her beginning. Far from Coruscant, beyond the mid-rim, lies a world cloaked in fog and blood, Dathomir, a land of twisted trees, crimson mist, and Nightsisters. This coven of force-sensitive witches practiced ancient magics, blending sorcery and the dark side. From them came Ventress, but not as a child of comfort. She was taken from them, stolen by fate. Pirates raided Dathomir and sold the young Asajj into slavery. She was eventually rescued by a Jedi named Narration, who saw in her the Force and trained her as his Padawan. For a time, there was peace. She had purpose. She had a family. But peace never lasted in her life. Narration was killed during a conflict on Ratatak, and Ventress, shattered by grief, fell into anger, into vengeance, into darkness. The Jedi never came for her. No counsel, no outreach, just silence. And so, she listened to the rage inside her. She took up a lightsaber, then another, and learned to survive alone. When Count Dooku, leader of the Separatists and secret Sith apprentice, discovered her, he saw potential. He trained her, not as a Sith, for that title was reserved for two, but as an extension of his will. She became his assassin, his enforcer. Clad in black and crimson, wielding two curved lightsabers, she was swift and deadly. Across the Clone Wars, Ventress faced Jedi again and again. She battled Anakin Skywalker. She clashed with Obi-Wan Kenobi. She cut down clone troopers with chilling precision. Her attacks were ruthless, but underneath the violence was something deeper, a hunger to belong, to be seen, to matter. But the Sith deal in deception. To them, loyalty is expendable. And when Darth Sidious began to sense that Dooku's attachment to Ventress was becoming dangerous, he ordered her death. Dooku, ever obedient, betrayed her. He sent assassins to end her life. They failed. But the betrayal cut deeper than any blade. Ventress fled, wounded both in body and soul. She returned to the only place she could, Dathomir. The Nightsisters welcomed her back. Led by the wise and mysterious Mother Talzin, they healed her and helped her plot revenge. Together, they conjured dark spells and used their ancient rituals to create a new warrior, Savage Opress, a monstrous Zabrak meant to destroy Dooku. But vengeance is a fire that burns out of control. Savage, powerful and unstable, betrayed them all. Dooku survived. The Nightsisters paid the price. The Sith sent General Grievous to annihilate them. In a night lit by green fire and shrouded in screams, the massacre of Dathomir began. Blaster bolts echoed through the canyons. Magic clashed with metal. One by one, the Nightsisters fell. Mother Talzin vanished. Ventress, heartbroken again, survived, but her people, her second chance, were gone. She was alone once more. From that moment, Ventress changed. She no longer served Dooku. She no longer fought for a cause she didn't believe in. She became a bounty hunter, drifting across the outer rim, taking contracts not for conquest, but survival. Still dangerous, still cunning, but now unbound. In this time, she crossed paths with old enemies and surprising allies. She helped Ahsoka Tano when a young Padawan was framed for bombing the Jedi Temple. Ventress, once a sworn enemy of the Jedi, saw something familiar in Ahsoka, someone cast out, someone forced to stand alone. It was one of the rare moments where her sharp demeanor softened. Later still, she found love, brief and fragile, with Quinlan Vos, a Jedi sent to assassinate Dooku in secret. Ventress trained him in the ways of the dark side to help him succeed. But the plan fell apart. Vos was captured, broken, and turned. Ventress fought to bring him back from the edge. And in doing so, she died, not with rage, but with purpose. She sacrificed herself to save him. Ventress's life was a cycle of betrayal and rebirth. She began as a slave, became a Jedi, then an assassin, then an outcast, and finally something rare in the Star Wars galaxy. A person who found their own path, unclaimed by either the Jedi or the Sith. She was not light. She was not dark. She was something else entirely. And though history often forgets her, the ripples she created, through Dooku, through Ahsoka, through Vos, can still be felt. A woman shaped by suffering. A warrior born of war. A soul that walked alone, but left behind echoes that would linger long after her final breath. Among the many terrors unleashed during the Clone Wars, few inspired as much dread as the Malevolence, a massive Separatist warship bristling with devastating weapons, and its terrifying commander, General Grievous. Together, they embodied a new era of warfare, cold, calculated, and merciless. The Malevolence was unlike any ship the Republic had faced before. This colossal dreadnought, equipped with a powerful ion cannon, was capable of disabling entire fleets with a single blast. Its sheer size and destructive power allowed it to roam the outer rim with impunity, devastating planets and crushing resistance with ruthless efficiency. To the soldiers on the ground and the commanders in the starships, it was a ghost, a moving nightmare that left destruction in its wake. But the Malevolence was not just a weapon of war. It was a symbol of the Separatists' technological might and their resolve to break the Republic. It struck fear not only because of its firepower, but because it forced the Jedi and clone forces to rethink their tactics, their strategies, and their very understanding of battle. At the heart of this terror was General Grievous, a being as fearsome in legend as in appearance. Grievous was a cyborg, half machine, half organic, his body a fusion of technology and the remains of a once-living warrior. His transformation was a product of Sith sorcery and science, designed to be the ultimate Jedi hunter. Grievous' eyes burned with a fierce yellow light, and his four mechanical arms wielded multiple lightsabers, trophies taken from Jedi he had slain. He was fast, unpredictable, and brutal. Stories spread among the clone ranks of his ferocity and cunning. He was not merely a general. He was a force of nature, a living storm of death. But behind the fear and the legend lay a tragic figure. Grievous was once Kaimine Jai Shilul, a warrior of the planet Kalish. He had been a proud leader and fierce fighter, loyal to his people and their traditions. His transformation into a cyborg was not voluntary. It was forced upon him by Sith lords seeking to craft the perfect weapon. This loss of identity fueled his rage against the Jedi, whom he blamed for his suffering. The battles Grievous fought were swift and deadly. He led numerous raids and strikes against Republic forces, often personally engaging Jedi in combat. His skills made him a nightmare for even the most experienced Jedi masters. But his arrogance and rage sometimes clouded his judgment, leading to mistakes that the Republic exploited. The Republic's response to the Malevolence and Grievous came through combined forces, uniting Jedi generals and clone commanders in desperate campaigns. The Malevolence was finally tracked to the planet Felucia, where a daring assault was launched to destroy it. Jedi like Anakin Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano led starfighters into the battle, while clone troopers fought valiantly on the surface. The battle was fierce. The Malevolence's ion cannon disabled many Republic ships, and its fighter squadrons swarmed relentlessly. But the Republic persevered. In a pivotal moment, Anakin piloted his fighter through the warship's defenses and unleashed a precise strike that crippled the Malevolence. The dreadnought exploded, sending shockwaves across space and signaling a turning point in the war. Despite this loss, Grievous remained a deadly threat. He retreated to Kaylee, his homeworld, to recover and gather new forces. There, the Jedi attempted to capture him, resulting in a series of confrontations that tested their limits. In the final duel, Obi-Wan Kenobi faced Grievous aboard the planet's surface. Using skill and patience, Obi-Wan ultimately defeated the cyborg general, bringing an end to his reign of terror. Yet, the story of the Malevolence and General Grievous was more than a tale of war machines and battles. It was a story of transformation, of a warrior-turned weapon, of fear shaping strategy, and of the fine line between man and machine. Their presence changed how the war was fought, how the Republic adapted, and how the Jedi understood their enemies. In the quiet moments after the battles, when stars shimmered in the void and silence returned, the shadow of the Malevolence lingered. It was a reminder of the cost of war, of lives altered, futures stolen, and the darkness that could rise when power and vengeance intertwined. Okay, here is the full script for your YouTube video, the entire timeline of the Clone Wars, with all non-script elements like scene descriptions and formatting notes removed. This should be ready for you to copy directly into Google Docs. Venture now into the deepest, most unsettling corners of the galaxy, to a world steeped in ancient, dark magic, Dathomir. This is no ordinary planet. It is a nexus of raw, untamed power, where the very air crackles with the whispers of forgotten rites and primal energies. Dathomir is home to the Nightsisters, a coven of Force-sensitive witches who harness the dark side of the Force in ways fundamentally different from the Sith or Jedi. Their power isn't derived from an emotional commitment to hatred or fear, but from a mystical connection to the planet itself, a lineage of sorcery passed down through generations, blending with a tribal, matriarchal culture. They practice a unique form of force manipulation, often referred to as magic, which manifests in arcane rituals, potent potions, and the ability to control and reanimate the dead. Their methods are brutal, their intentions often selfish, and their loyalty fiercely devoted to their matriarch, Mother Talzin. The Nightsisters are formidable, not just for their dark arts, but for their cunning and their strategic manipulation of others. They exist on the fringes of galactic civilization, largely undisturbed, but always observing, always seeking opportunities to expand their influence and power. Their isolation has allowed them to develop a unique philosophy and a formidable power base, making them a force to be reckoned with, even for the most seasoned Jedi or Sith. The insidious influence of Dathomir and its Nightsisters profoundly shaped the destinies of several key figures in the Clone Wars, none more dramatically than Asajj Ventress. Once a loyal servant of Count Dooku, Ventress was in fact a former Nightsister, torn from her people at a young age. Her return to Dathomir after being betrayed by Dooku was a pivotal moment. The Nightsisters, particularly Mother Talzin, welcomed her back, offering her solace and a path for revenge against her former master. They empowered her, restoring her connection to their ancient ways and transforming her into an even more dangerous and unpredictable force. Ventress's journey from Sith assassin to independent bounty hunter, driven by a desire for vengeance and a complex moral compass, was inextricably linked to her Dathomirian heritage. Her battles against Dooku, often aided by her Nightsister sisters, were demonstrations of their formidable collective power and their willingness to intervene directly in galactic affairs when it served their interests. But the Nightsisters' influence extended even further, reaching back into the annals of Sith history to resurrect a shadow thought long dead, Darth Maul. It was Mother Talzin who, through powerful Force rituals, located and restored the shattered mind and body of the former Sith Lord, who had survived his apparent demise at the hands of Obi-Wan Kenobi. This act of dark sorcery was not one of compassion, but of calculated ambition. Talzin saw Maul as a tool, a weapon to unleash chaos upon the galaxy and potentially serve her own ends. Maul's resurrection was a terrifying event, unleashing a raw, unbridled fury upon the galaxy, a force of vengeance fueled by years of solitude and simmering hatred. And then there was Savage Ventress, a towering, brutish Zabrak, plucked from the Nightsisters' male brethren, the Night Brothers, and imbued with dark side power by Mother Talzin. Savage was intended to be a loyal instrument, a powerful enforcer for Ventress and, later, for Maul. He was a creature of immense strength and limited intellect, easily manipulated but undeniably dangerous. His transformation was a chilling display of the Nightsisters' ability to corrupt and control, turning an ordinary being into a vessel of destruction. Savage's journey, from his initial subservience to Ventress to his eventual alliance with his long-lost brother Maul, was a tragic tale of manipulation and the destructive power of unchecked dark side energy. He was a blunt instrument, unleashing violence and chaos wherever he went, ultimately becoming a victim of the very forces that empowered him. The Nightsisters, with their eerie rituals and potent magic, represented a distinct and unsettling facet of the dark side, one that defied the traditional Sith and Jedi dichotomy. They were a reminder that the Force was vast and multifaceted, capable of being wielded in countless ways, some of which were ancient, primal, and terrifyingly effective. Their presence on Dathomir, a world shrouded in perpetual twilight, whispered of ancient power, shaping the destinies of those who dared to tread upon its crimson soil and forever altering the course of the Clone Wars through the monsters and instruments they unleashed upon the galaxy. The Clone Wars were a conflict of grand battles and strategic maneuvers, but sometimes the most profound stories unfolded in the most unlikely of places. Deep within Separatist territory, a formidable fortress known as the Citadel stood as a testament to their military might. It was an impregnable prison, a symbol of their resolve, designed to hold the most valuable of Republic prisoners. When word reached the Jedi Council that Jedi Master Even Peel, a vital source of Republic intelligence, had been captured and imprisoned within its walls, a desperate plan was hatched. This wasn't a large-scale invasion. It was a surgical strike, a high-stakes rescue mission that would test the limits of courage, loyalty, and sacrifice. The mission was spearheaded by two of the Republic's finest, Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi. With them was a small, elite team of ARC troopers and specialized clone commandos, including Captain Rex, and even Ahsoka Tano, demonstrating her growing maturity and combat prowess. Their objective was clear but fraught with peril: infiltrate the Citadel, extract Master Peel, and retrieve the critical intelligence he possessed about a Separatist hyperspace lane known as the Nexus Route, a pathway that could turn the tide of the war. From the moment they landed on Lolas, the planet housing the Citadel, the tension was palpable. The environment itself was a deadly adversary, filled with natural hazards and Separatist patrols. The Jedi and clones moved with precision and coordination, a well-oiled machine operating under immense pressure. They navigated treacherous terrain, bypassed sophisticated security systems, and engaged in close-quarters combat against overwhelming numbers of droids and Separatist forces. Every step of the mission was a testament to their skill and unwavering determination. What truly elevated the Citadel arc, however, was not just the thrilling action sequences, but the profound exploration of clone sacrifices. The clones were more than just expendable soldiers. They were individuals with distinct personalities, hopes, and fears, bound by duty and an unbreakable brotherhood. In the claustrophobic confines of the Citadel, their bravery shone through. We witnessed instances of selfless heroism, where clones put their lives on the line for their Jedi commanders and for each other. They faced overwhelming odds, often without hesitation, understanding the gravity of their mission and the importance of Master Peel's information. The stakes became agonizingly clear when the team was forced to cross a lava river, a perilous journey that claimed the lives of several clones, including the dedicated and courageous Commander Echo of the Domino Squad. His sacrifice, along with others, was not in vain. It was a grim reminder of the brutal cost of war and the unwavering commitment of these soldiers. Each loss was felt deeply by the remaining team members, particularly by Captain Rex, who had fought alongside Echo and considered him a brother. These moments were not glorified. They were presented with a solemn weight, highlighting the tragic reality faced by the clones every single day. The rescue of Master Peel was ultimately successful, but it came at a heavy price. The Citadel mission underscored the often overlooked heroism of the clone troopers, who, despite being genetically engineered for war, demonstrated profound courage, loyalty, and a deep sense of camaraderie. Their sacrifices were not just tactical necessities. They were acts of profound bravery, often made in the shadow of the Jedi, yet equally vital to the Republic's cause. The Citadel arc served as a powerful narrative that humanized the clones, forcing viewers to confront the personal toll of the war and the profound impact of their unwavering dedication. It was a tense, moving saga that etched itself into the timeline, a testament to the fact that heroism often wears the armor of a clone trooper, and that even in the bleakest of circumstances, the flame of hope can be carried by those willing to make the ultimate sacrifice. Beyond the familiar battlegrounds of the Clone Wars lies a planet shrouded in perpetual twilight, its atmosphere thick with an unsettling fog, and its forests teeming with bioluminescent, carnivorous plant life. This is Umbara, the Shadow World, a place where the very landscape conspires against those who dare to tread upon it. The Battle of Umbara is not just another conflict in the vast tapestry of the Clone Wars. It is a harrowing, heartbreaking saga that ripped at the very fabric of clone loyalty and challenged the moral compass of the Jedi. It is a story where the enemy wasn't just the Separatist droids, but the insidious influence of distrust, betrayal, and the profound tragedy of soldiers being forced to fight their own. The Republic's objective on Umbara was strategic, to secure the planet and its vital supply routes. However, the mission took a dark turn with the introduction of Jedi General Pong Krell, a beazelisk Jedi master with 4 arms and a chillingly cold demeanor. Krell was a highly decorated general, renowned for his tactical brilliance and his uncompromising approach to warfare. Yet, beneath his reputation lay a deep-seated contempt for the clones, viewing them as mere expendable assets, tools to be used and discarded at will. He replaced Anakin Skywalker, who was called away, as the commander of the 501st Legion, and his command style was immediate and brutal. Krell's tactics were reckless and seemingly suicidal. He ordered the clones on frontal assaults against heavily fortified Separatist positions, resulting in horrific casualties. He deliberately put his own troops in harm's way, disregarding their lives with a chilling indifference. Captain Rex, accustomed to Anakin's leadership and his respect for the clones, found himself in an impossible position. He was torn between his unwavering loyalty to the Republic and his growing moral revulsion at Krell's commands. The clones, under Krell's command, particularly the seasoned veterans like Rex and Fives, began to question his motives, witnessing the senseless loss of their brothers and the blatant disregard for established military protocols. The psychological toll on the clone troopers was immense. They were fighting in an alien environment, against cunning adversaries, under a commander who seemed to actively desire their destruction. The Umbara militia, with their unique, often invisible weaponry and vehicles, further amplified the sense of disorientation and paranoia. The fog of war on Umbara was literal and metaphorical, clouding judgment and eroding trust. The heartbreaking climax of the Umbara arc came when Krell deliberately manipulated the clones into fighting each other. He fed them false intelligence, leading them to believe they were attacking Umbaran soldiers, when in reality, they were engaging another clone regiment. The scene of clone fighting clone, brothers slaughtering brothers, under the mistaken belief that they were battling the enemy, is one of the most poignant and devastating moments in the entire series. It highlighted the profound tragedy of the war, where the lines between friend and foe could become dangerously blurred, and where internal divisions could be just as destructive as external threats. The clones, driven to their breaking point, ultimately chose to disobey Krell's unlawful orders. It was an unprecedented act of mutiny, a testament to their individual sentience and their collective moral compass. Captain Rex, wrestling with his duty and his conscience, was forced to make an agonizing decision, one that risked court-martial and execution. The capture and eventual execution of Pong Krell, not by the Separatists, but by his own clone troopers for treason and war crimes, was a dark but necessary resolution. It was a moment of profound moral reckoning, demonstrating that even genetically engineered soldiers possess the capacity for independent thought and the courage to defy an unjust command. Umbara was a war fought not just with blasters and explosions, but with psychological warfare and moral dilemmas. It exposed the vulnerabilities within the Republic's command structure and foreshadowed the dark days to come. The scars left by Umbara ran deep, a grim reminder of the sacrifices made, the trust betrayed, and the devastating impact of war when soldiers are forced to fight not just the enemy, but each other in the suffocating shadows of doubt and despair. In the annals of Sith history, few figures inspired as much primal fear and raw power as Darth Maul. Presumed dead, bisected by Obi-Wan Kenobi's lightsaber on Naboo, his return was a development so audacious, so utterly unexpected, that it sent shockwaves through the galaxy and profoundly reshaped the very nature of the Clone Wars. His reemergence wasn't a heroic triumph, but a haunting resurrection, a whispered dream turned into a living nightmare, fueled by vengeance and an unquenchable thirst for power. For years, he festered in the desolate depths of Lotho Minor, his mind fractured by pain and madness, his body pieced together with salvaged machinery, a grotesque parody of his former self. It was his brother, Asajj Ventress, whom he met earlier under the influence of the Nightsisters, who eventually found him. Sent by Mother Talzin, Asajj was a conduit, a vessel of fate bringing two formidable instruments of chaos back into the galactic fold. The reunion was not one of warmth, but of raw, guttural recognition, as Asajj brought the broken husk of Maul back to Dathomir, where Mother Talzin, with her dark magic, restored his mind and gave him new, powerful cybernetic legs, resurrecting not just his body, but the chilling intellect and ruthless ambition that had made him such a terrifying force. Maul's return was not simply a personal vendetta against Obi-Wan Kenobi. It was a furious declaration of his intent to reclaim his place in the galaxy, to carve out his own empire of chaos, independent of the Sith Lords who had seemingly abandoned him. His initial objective was clear: to make Obi-Wan suffer, to inflict upon him the same agony and loss that Maul himself had endured. Their subsequent encounters were visceral, intensely personal duels, fueled by years of mutual hatred. But Maul's ambition quickly broadened. He wasn't content to simply be an assassin. He sought to build his own power base, to rise from the ashes of his defeat and become a dominant force in the criminal underworld. With Asajj Ventress as his brutal enforcer, Maul began to carve a path of destruction across the Outer Rim. They preyed on vulnerable systems, built a network of criminal syndicates, and challenged the authority of both the Republic and the Separatists. Maul's cunning intellect, combined with Asajj's raw strength, made them a formidable duo. They were a wild card, disrupting established hierarchies and creating instability wherever they went. Maul wasn't merely a brute. He was a strategic mastermind, capable of manipulating events and exploiting weaknesses to his advantage. His aim was not galactic domination in the traditional Sith sense, but the creation of an underworld empire, a shadow dominion built on fear and coercion. Their rise did not go unnoticed. Darth Sidious, Maul's former master, felt his presence in the Force, a disturbance he could not ignore. The encounter between Sidious, Maul, and Savage was a chilling display of raw dark side power. Sidious effortlessly dispatched Savage, a brutal demonstration of his overwhelming strength and his absolute intolerance for any challenge to his authority. Maul, despite his renewed power and ambition, was still no match for the ultimate Dark Lord of the Sith. This confrontation served as a stark reminder of the hierarchical nature of the Sith and the true extent of Sidious's power. It also left Maul alive, albeit imprisoned, to fester and plot his next move, a pawn in Sidious's grander scheme, yet still a dangerous and unpredictable force. The return of Darth Maul was a pivotal moment in the Clone Wars, injecting a new layer of complexity and danger into the conflict. He was an embodiment of pure, unadulterated hatred and vengeance, a specter from the past who refused to remain buried. His actions, from his relentless pursuit of Obi-Wan to his establishment of the Shadow Collective, created widespread chaos and forced both the Republic and the Separatists to divert resources to counter his growing influence. Maul was not fighting for either side. He was fighting for himself, for his own twisted vision of power, and his haunting return whispered of a galaxy spiraling further into darkness, a chaotic dream from which there was no waking. Far from the conventional battlefields of the Clone Wars, nestled within the Outer Rim, lies Mandalore, a world with a storied past and a fiercely independent spirit. Mandalore's struggle during the Clone Wars was not merely a territorial dispute or a clash of ideologies. It was a deeply personal tragedy, a heartbreaking civil war that tore the very soul of its people. At the heart of this conflict stood Duchess Satine Kryze, the pacifist leader of the new Mandalorian government, who championed neutrality and sought to rebuild her war-torn planet through diplomacy and peace. Her vision for Mandalore was one of cultural prosperity, free from the violence that had plagued its history, a stark contrast to the ancient, warrior traditions of her ancestors. Satine's unwavering commitment to peace, however, put her at odds with a powerful faction of Mandalorians who yearned for a return to their martial heritage, the extremist group known as Death Watch. Led by the formidable Pre-Vizsla, Death Watch believed in the old ways, the way of the warrior, of conquest, and of Mandalorian supremacy through force. They saw Satine's pacifism as weakness, a betrayal of their proud lineage, and actively sought to overthrow her government and reclaim Mandalore's warlike past. Their clandestine operations, acts of terrorism, and attempts to destabilize the new Mandalorian regime created an internal struggle that bled into the broader galactic conflict. The internal strife on Mandalore was further exacerbated by the unexpected and terrifying return of Darth Maul. Having survived his encounter with Darth Sidious, Maul, along with his brother Savage Ventress, sought to build his own criminal empire, the Shadow Collective, which brought together various criminal syndicates. Mandalore, with its strategic location and its simmering civil war, presented a perfect opportunity for Maul to expand his influence. He saw in Death Watch a potential ally, a violent force he could manipulate to achieve his own ends. Maul's cunning plan was to exploit the existing divisions within Mandalore. He offered Death Watch his considerable resources and the might of the Shadow Collective, promising them the power to overthrow Satine and restore their warrior traditions. Pre-Vizsla, blinded by his ambition and desire for power, foolishly agreed to this alliance, believing he could control Maul. What followed was a brutal and swift takeover of Mandalore. The combined forces of Death Watch and the Shadow Collective launched a devastating assault on Sundari, the capital city, overwhelming the Loyalist forces and capturing Duchess Satine. The true heartbreak of Mandalore's civil war came with the inevitable betrayal. Once Satine was deposed and Vizsla seemingly in control, Maul revealed his true intentions. He challenged Vizsla for leadership of Mandalore, a duel fought not for honor, but for absolute power. Maul, despite his cybernetic legs, proved to be the superior warrior, easily dispatching Vizsla and claiming the legendary Darksaber for himself. This act solidified his control over Death Watch, effectively making him the new ruler of Mandalore, albeit a tyrannical one. The fall of Mandalore to Maul was a crushing blow to Obi-Wan Kenobi, who shared a deep, personal connection with Duchess Satine. Their relationship, though platonic, was one of profound respect and affection, a testament to a bond that transcended the strictures of the Jedi Code. Obi-Wan's desperate attempt to rescue Satine was met with tragic failure. Maul, in a cruel act of vengeance designed to inflict maximum pain upon Obi-Wan, publicly executed Satine before his eyes. This moment, a raw display of pure malice, was a devastating personal loss for Obi-Wan, shattering his composure and exposing the profound emotional toll the war was taking on even the most stoic of Jedi. Mandalore's civil war was a microcosm of the larger galactic conflict, demonstrating how internal divisions could be exploited by external forces, leading to widespread suffering and the subversion of a people's will. It was a story of broken peace, betrayed trust, and the crushing weight of personal loss, echoing the sentiment that even in a galaxy consumed by war, some battles hit closer to home than any lightsaber ever could. The shadows that fell over Mandalore were not just those of an invading force, but the deep, indelible marks of a nation fractured from within, forever shaped by the echoes of a civil war and the haunting whisper of a demon reborn. As the Clone Wars raged across the galaxy, consuming planets and lives in its fiery maw, another, more insidious battle was being fought within the very heart of the Republic, the slow, agonizing decline of the Jedi Order's influence. Once revered as noble peacekeepers, guardians of justice, and beacons of hope, the Jedi found themselves increasingly entangled in a conflict they were ill-equipped to handle, their moral compasses strained, and their spiritual clarity clouded by the pervasive darkness of war. The calm, confident authority they once wielded began to wane, replaced by a growing sense of helplessness, distrust, and internal decay. The most prominent symptom of this decline was the Jedi's ever-deepening involvement in the political machinations of the Republic. Designed to be keepers of the peace, they were instead forced to become generals, strategists, and frontline commanders, leading clone armies into battle. This direct participation in military affairs blurred the lines of their ancient mandate and pushed them further away from their true calling. They found themselves making difficult, often morally ambiguous decisions, sacrificing the purity of their ideals for the perceived necessity of winning the war. The Jedi Council, once a bastion of wisdom, became a de facto war council, their attention consumed by battle reports and strategic objectives, rather than the subtle whisperings of the Force. This political entanglement fostered a growing distrust from the very people they sought to protect. The citizens of the Republic, weary of war and the constant threat of Separatist attacks, began to question the Jedi's efficacy. Propaganda, subtly orchestrated by Darth Sidious, painted them as warmongers, responsible for prolonging the conflict, or as ineffective leaders unable to bring about a swift victory. Senators and bureaucrats, often corrupt or easily manipulated, chipped away at the Jedi's authority, challenging their decisions and questioning their motives. The Jedi, once above reproach, found themselves facing public scrutiny and political maneuvering, a battlefield they were unaccustomed to navigating. Spiritually, the Jedi Order was in a state of profound confusion. The dark side, specifically the influence of Darth Sidious, cast a suffocating shadow over the galaxy, clouding their ability to perceive the Force clearly. Their once unshakable connection to the living force became fractured, their premonitions less reliable, and their intuition dulled. They sensed a growing darkness, a pervasive evil, but were unable to pinpoint its source or understand its true nature. This spiritual blindness led to a sense of frustration and helplessness, as they found themselves fighting a war they couldn't truly comprehend, against an enemy whose true identity remained hidden in plain sight. The internal decay within the Order manifested in subtle but significant ways. The sheer scale of the war forced the Jedi to take on more Padawans, often rushing their training, leading to younger, less experienced Jedi being thrust into dangerous situations. The constant exposure to violence and loss chipped away at the composure of even the most disciplined Jedi. Some, like Pong Krell, succumbed to the dark side's temptations, demonstrating the cracks forming within the Order's moral foundation. The rigid adherence to the Jedi Code, once a source of strength, became a weakness in a conflict that demanded adaptability and nuance. Their refusal to embrace attachments, while noble in theory, often isolated them from the very beings they sought to save, making them appear detached and unempathetic. The Jedi's reliance on the clone army, while militarily necessary, also contributed to their spiritual decline. They became comfortable with leading an army rather than being independent peacekeepers. The clones, though loyal, were ultimately instruments of war, and the Jedi's command over them slowly but surely eroded their traditional role as guardians of a civil society. The war, a meticulously crafted trap by Sidious, was designed to exploit these very weaknesses, to push the Jedi into a position where their principles would be compromised, their numbers thinned, and their public image tarnished beyond repair. The waning influence of the Jedi Order was a tragedy unfolding in slow motion, a silent wound that festered beneath the surface of the grand conflict. It was a narrative of good intentions corrupted, of noble guardians losing their way in the fog of war, and of an ancient institution unable to adapt to the insidious nature of the threat it faced. The Jedi, once the shining light of the Republic, found themselves adrift in a sea of political distrust, spiritual confusion, and internal decay, setting the stage for the ultimate betrayal that would shatter their order forever. The quiet scars of this erosion would resonate far beyond the war, shaping the very nature of the galaxy that emerged from the ashes of conflict. Among the many heart-wrenching events that unfolded during the Clone Wars, few carried the quiet devastation and profound significance of Ahsoka Tano's departure from the Jedi Order. It was not a grand battle or a heroic sacrifice, but a personal tragedy that echoed across the galaxy, a stark illustration of the Jedi's growing fallibility and the insidious nature of the darkness that had begun to consume them from within. This moment was a culmination of the seeds of doubt that had been sown within Ahsoka throughout the war, a testament to her independent spirit and her unwavering commitment to justice, even when it meant defying the very institution that had raised her. The catalyst for her agonizing decision was a horrifying act of terrorism, the bombing of the Jedi Temple hangar, followed by the subsequent murder of Republic clone troopers. The initial suspect was Ahsoka's friend, Barriss Offee, but as the investigation deepened, the blame was skillfully shifted through meticulous framing onto Ahsoka herself. It was a cruel and cunning plot, designed to not only eliminate a potential threat, but also to sow discord within the Jedi ranks and further erode public trust in the Order. What followed was a harrowing and deeply unjust trial, not in a traditional court of law, but before the very Jedi Council that had trained and nurtured her. Despite the lack of concrete evidence and Ahsoka's impassioned pleas of innocence, the Council, under intense public pressure and their own increasing paranoia, chose to expel her from the Order. This was not merely a formal dismissal. It was a profound betrayal. Stripped of her rank, her lightsabers confiscated, Ahsoka stood alone, abandoned by the very masters who should have defended her. The sight of her walking away from the temple, escorted by clone guards as a prisoner, was a powerful visual metaphor for the Jedi's waning influence and their tragic inability to see the truth. Anakin Skywalker, her devoted master, was the sole beacon of hope and belief in her innocence. He tirelessly worked to clear her name, driven by his deep bond with her and his own sense of injustice. His relentless pursuit of the truth ultimately uncovered the real culprit, Barriss Offee, corrupted by her own disillusionment with the Jedi and the war, who confessed to the bombing and the framing of Ahsoka. Barriss's motives, born from a belief that the Jedi had lost their way and become instruments of violence, serve as a chilling foreshadowing of the Order's eventual downfall. With Barriss's confession, the Jedi Council, realizing their grave error, offered Ahsoka an apology and invited her back into the Order, even offering her the rank of Jedi Knight. It was a moment of vindication, a chance for her to reclaim her place among them. But the damage had been done. The quiet devastation of their betrayal, the injustice she had suffered, and the realization that the Council could so easily abandon their own had irrevocably broken her faith in the institution. In a poignant and heart-wrenching scene, Ahsoka made her choice. She would not return. She explained to a heartbroken Anakin that she could no longer trust the Council, nor could she truly be a part of an Order that had failed her so profoundly. Her decision was not born of anger or spite, but of a profound spiritual clarity. She realized that her path lay elsewhere, that she needed to forge her own destiny, independent of the rigid dogma and the political entanglements that were slowly strangling the Jedi. The echoes of Ahsoka's choice reverberated throughout the galaxy. For Anakin, it was a profound blow, a deep wound that chipped away at his own dwindling faith in the Jedi. Her departure further isolated him, pushing him closer to the manipulative influence of Chancellor Palpatine. For the Jedi Order, it was a silent condemnation, a visible crack in their once impenetrable facade, proving their vulnerability and their increasing blindness to the truth. Ahsoka's walk away from the Jedi Temple was not an act of rebellion, but an act of self-preservation, a desperate attempt to maintain her own moral compass in a galaxy spiraling into chaos. It was a quiet devastation that spoke volumes, a powerful testament to the fact that even the most cherished bonds could be severed by injustice, and that sometimes finding your true path means walking away from everything you've ever known. As the Clone Wars hurled towards its cataclysmic end, its final, grand crescendo began to unfold, a ballet of choreographed destruction set against the familiar, yet now profoundly ominous, backdrop of Mandalore. This wasn't merely another battle. It was a meticulously planned endgame, a desperate gambit, led by an unexpected alliance and fueled by a personal vendetta against a resurgent evil. This was the Siege of Mandalore, a beautifully choreographed conflict that would serve as one of the war's most brutal and poignant swan songs, forever etched in the annals of galactic history. The instigator of this monumental undertaking was none other than Ahsoka Tano, now operating outside the confines of the Jedi Order, yet still deeply committed to fighting for justice. Her target, Darth Maul. Maul, having solidified his tyrannical control over Mandalore with his Shadow Collective, had transformed the once proud world into a bastion of his criminal empire, a dark reflection of its former glory. He was a growing threat, not just to the Republic, but to the very fabric of galactic order, and Ahsoka, driven by a desire to stop his reign of terror and to prevent further suffering, felt compelled to act. Her initial efforts to convince the Jedi Council to commit resources to Mandalore were met with skepticism and reluctance. The Council, stretched thin by the relentless war effort and increasingly focused on the looming threat of General Grievous on Coruscant, deemed Maul's presence a lower priority. It was a bitter pill for Ahsoka, a stark reminder of the very reasons she had left the Order. However, she found an unlikely but steadfast ally in Captain Rex. Their bond, forged in countless battles and tempered by mutual respect, remained unbroken. Rex, understanding the critical importance of stopping Maul and deeply loyal to Ahsoka, orchestrated a crucial intervention. He appealed to Anakin Skywalker, leveraging their close relationship and Anakin's deep affection for his former Padawan. Despite his Jedi obligations, Anakin, recognizing the urgency and trusting Ahsoka's judgment, agreed to commit a portion of the 501st Legion to the Mandalore operation, specifically the newly designated Siege of Mandalore contingent. This selfless act, born of loyalty and concern for Ahsoka, meant diverting crucial Republic forces away from the main war effort, a decision that carried immense strategic risk, yet underscored the personal stakes involved. The Republic forces, spearheaded by Ahsoka and Rex, with their newly painted helmets bearing the distinctive orange marks of Ahsoka's Togruta facial patterns, a powerful visual symbol of the clone's unwavering loyalty to her, arrived on Mandalore. The ensuing battle was a spectacle of tactical brilliance and brutal close-quarters combat. The Mandalorian Death Watch, now loyal to Maul, were formidable opponents, fighting with a ferocity born of their warrior traditions. However, Ahsoka, leading her forces with a masterful blend of lightsaber prowess and strategic acumen, proved to be their equal. The choreography of the battle was breathtaking, a symphony of blaster fire, lightsaber clashes, and acrobatic maneuvers. Ahsoka moved with an almost ethereal grace, her two lightsabers cutting through droids and Mandalorians with deadly precision. Rex, leading his clone troopers, demonstrated the tactical brilliance and unwavering courage that had defined his career. The fight for Sundari was intense, a street-by-street, building-by-building struggle that showcased the grim realities of urban warfare. The shadows of doom were literal, cast by the imposing structures of Mandalore, and metaphorical as the galaxy braced itself for the inevitable conclusion of the Clone Wars. But amidst the grand scale of the battle, the true heart of the siege of Mandalore lay in the personal confrontation, Ahsoka versus Maul. Their duel was not just a clash of lightsabers. It was a clash of ideologies, a contest between selfless justice and self-serving tyranny. Maul, with his dual-bladed lightsaber and his relentless ferocity, was a terrifying opponent, consumed by hatred and a cunning intelligence. Ahsoka, drawing upon her unique blend of Jedi training and her own independent spirit, matched him blow for blow, demonstrating her immense growth and mastery of the Force. The Siege of Mandalore was a desperate race against time, a final, grand act of heroism and sacrifice before the inevitable darkness consumed the galaxy. It was a beautifully choreographed endgame, set in the literal and metaphorical shadows of doom, a testament to Ahsoka's courage, Rex's loyalty, and the unwavering spirit of those who fought to bring light into a galaxy teetering on the brink of utter collapse. This battle was not just about taking back a planet. It was about confronting a personal demon and making a last, valiant stand against the encroaching darkness, unaware of the far greater betrayal that was about to unfold. Then the unthinkable happened. A single, insidious command, whispered from the lips of the galaxy's ultimate puppet master, ignited a storm of silence, betrayal, and sorrow that tore the heart out of the Republic and forever reshaped the destiny of the Jedi. This was Order 66, the culmination of Darth Sidious's meticulously crafted plan, a devastating coup that saw the valiant clone troopers, once loyal defenders of the Republic and trusted companions of the Jedi, turn on their unsuspecting generals in a horrifying, systematic purge. The execution of Order 66 was a moment of profound cosmic horror, a betrayal on an unimaginable scale. It began with a single, coded transmission from Chancellor Palpatine himself, directed to every clone commander across the galaxy. This was not a suggestion or a request. It was an ingrained directive, a secret command embedded within the very genetic makeup of every clone trooper through an inhibitor chip. When activated, this chip override their free will, their loyalty, and their personal bonds, transforming them into unwitting instruments of mass murder. The scenes unfolded with chilling uniformity across countless worlds. From the verdant jungles of Kashyyyk, where Master Yoda sensed the sudden, overwhelming disturbance in the Force, to the arid plains of Felucia, where Aayla Secura fell under a hail of blaster fire from her own troops, the pattern was tragically consistent. Jedi Masters, caught unaware, fighting alongside their clone forces against Separatist droids, were suddenly targeted by the very soldiers they had bled with, and come to trust. The expressions on the clones' faces were blank, devoid of emotion, their eyes betraying no malice, only the cold, unfeeling obedience of a program directive. The Jedi Temple on Coruscant, the very heart of the Jedi Order, became the epicenter of the Purge. Led by Anakin Skywalker, now twisted into the monstrous Darth Vader, the 501st Legion, once the shining example of Jedi clone cooperation, marched through the sacred halls. The screams of younglings, the desperate clashes of lightsabers against blaster fire, and the systematic slaughter of Jedi Knights and Masters echoed through the once hallowed chambers. Vader, consumed by the dark side, showed no mercy, fulfilling Sidious's grim prophecy of the Jedi's destruction. The very place where hope and wisdom had flourished became a tomb. The true horror of Order 66 lay in its calculated deception. The clones, for all their individuality and camaraderie with the Jedi, were ultimately tools. Their loyalty was manufactured, their free will a fragile illusion. This betrayal was not born of hatred, but of programming, making it all the more tragic. Captain Rex, despite his inhibitor chip being activated, famously managed to overcome its influence, thanks to Ahsoka Tano and her quick thinking, a testament to the power of his bond with her and his inherent goodness. But for countless others, there was no escape. The Jedi, too, were victims of their own spiritual blindness. They had been fighting an external war, focused on the Separatist threat, while the true danger festered within their own ranks, cloaked in the guise of their trusted allies and the seemingly benevolent Chancellor. Their inability to perceive Sidious's presence, their increasing reliance on the Grand Army of the Republic, and their growing detachment from the common people all contributed to their vulnerability. They were caught in a trap meticulously set over decades, and when the trigger was pulled, they had nowhere to turn. Order 66 was not just a military operation. It was a psychological and spiritual assault designed to annihilate the Jedi and pave the way for a new galactic order. The storm of silence was the cessation of Jedi voices in the Force, their presence extinguished en masse. The betrayal was absolute, severing the deep bonds of trust that had defined the war. The sorrow was immense, a cosmic wail that reverberated through the Force, echoing the extinction of an ancient and revered order. From temple halls to jungle outposts, the Jedi Purge marked the terrifying, solemn end of an era, a brutal silencing of the Guardians of Peace, and the chilling dawn of a new, darker age. As the last echoes of Order 66 faded into a horrifying silence, the galaxy held its breath. The smoke of the Jedi Purge cleared not to reveal peace, but the chilling dawn of a new, far more insidious era. The Grand Army of the Republic, once a symbol of freedom and democracy, was quietly, almost imperceptibly, transmuted into the iron fist of a tyrannical regime. The Republic, having fought so valiantly against external threats, died not with a bang, but with a whimper, replaced by the chilling efficiency of the Galactic Empire. The architect of this monumental shift was, of course, Emperor Palpatine, once the benevolent Chancellor, now the undisputed Dark Lord of the Sith, Darth Sidious, who had played both sides of the war with a masterful, Machiavellian cunning. His long-game strategy, spanning decades, had meticulously engineered the very conflict that would pave his path to absolute power. The Clone Wars, ostensibly fought to preserve the Republic, had in fact been a grand deception, a means to an end. It had allowed him to consolidate power, to demonize the Jedi, and to create the very military machine that would enforce his will. The transition from Republic to Empire was swift and brutal. Palpatine, exploiting the fear and exhaustion of a war-weary galaxy, addressed the Galactic Senate, proclaiming the end of the Republic and the birth of a new order, the First Galactic Empire. He framed the Jedi as traitors, orchestrators of a coup against the legitimately elected government, thus justifying their annihilation. The public, manipulated by years of subtle propaganda and desperate for stability, largely accepted this narrative, trading their freedoms for the promise of security. The Senate, weakened and intimidated, largely applauded his ascension, a chilling display of democratic institutions willingly surrendering to tyranny. The core of the Empire was the transformed clone army. No longer fighting for freedom, they became the enforcers of imperial rule, their distinctive white armor now a symbol of oppression. Their independent thoughts suppressed by the inhibitor chips, they were the perfect instruments of control, loyal only to the Emperor. They were quickly augmented and eventually replaced by new recruits, transforming into the iconic stormtroopers, a faceless, uniformed legion of oppression. The starships that once defended the Republic were now repurposed as instruments of conquest and intimidation, their imposing silhouettes dominating the skies of subjugated worlds. The galaxy, traumatized by years of conflict, largely offered little resistance. Worlds that had suffered under Separatist occupation now found themselves under the iron boot of the Empire. Trade routes were seized, dissenting voices silenced, and civil liberties stripped away under the guise of maintaining order. Palpatine's new order was one of absolute control, enforced through fear and military might. The regional governors, once representatives of the Republic, became Moffs and Grand Moffs, wielding immense power and serving directly under the Emperor. The aftershocks of this transition were profound. For the few Jedi who survived Order 66, it meant a life of hiding, constant fear, and the agonizing realization that everything they had fought for had been twisted into its antithesis. For the clones, it meant a new, chilling purpose, their existence now solely dedicated to enforcing the very tyranny they had once fought against. For the citizens of the galaxy, it meant the slow, creeping realization that the peace they had longed for was a lie, a gilded cage enforced by an omnipresent, oppressive government. The rise of the Empire was not a loud, chaotic revolution, but a quiet, methodical seizure of power. It was a testament to Palpatine's unparalleled cunning and the Jedi's fatal blindness. The Republic didn't simply fall. It was suffocated, its ideals slowly choked out by the very war it believed it was fighting to win. The Empire rose from the ashes of conflict, not as a sudden storm, but as a chilling, omnipresent shadow, quietly asserting its control, ushering in an age of darkness that would define the galaxy for decades to come. The Clone Wars, for all its heroism and sacrifice, had ultimately served as the cradle for tyranny, a silent, sorrowful transition from a fragile peace to an enforced, brutal order. The Clone Wars, for all its epic scale, its thrilling battles, and its unforgettable characters, was more than just a conflict. It was a crucible that fundamentally reshaped the Star Wars galaxy, leaving behind a complex and indelible legacy. Its quiet scars, though often unseen, profoundly influenced everything that came after, setting the stage for the Galactic Civil War and forging the heroes and villains who would define a new era. This was not merely a war that ended. It was a transformative event, echoing through generations, forever altering the destiny of clones, Jedi, and the galaxy itself. For the clone troopers, the legacy was a particularly poignant one. Bred for war, designed for obedience, they were nevertheless individuals who formed deep bonds, demonstrated remarkable bravery, and often wrestled with their own consciences. The war gave them purpose, but it also stripped them of their autonomy. Order 66, the ultimate betrayal, redefined their existence. Those who survived the Jedi Purge found themselves serving the very tyranny they had once fought against, their lives now dedicated to upholding the Empire. Some, like Captain Rex, managed to escape the programming and forge new paths, living out their days in quiet defiance. Others, like Commander Cody, continued to serve, their once noble purpose twisted into a grim duty. The war left them with profound psychological scars, a haunting reminder of the brothers they lost and the horrors they were forced to commit. Their legacy is one of unwavering loyalty, tragically exploited, a testament to the fact that even genetically engineered soldiers possessed a capacity for humanity that transcended their programming. For the Jedi Order, the legacy was one of near-total annihilation. The war exposed their vulnerabilities, their spiritual blindness, and their entanglement in political power. They had become warriors, not peacekeepers, and in doing so, they lost sight of the true nature of the dark side manipulating them. The Jedi Purge scattered the few survivors to the far corners of the galaxy, forcing them into hiding, their once proud order reduced to a handful of desperate individuals. The war's end marked the end of the Jedi as a monolithic institution, but it also, paradoxically, ensured the survival of their spirit through those who would eventually rise to rebuild. The scars on the Jedi were existential, a reminder of the price of arrogance and the chilling effectiveness of an enemy who could weaponize their own strengths against them. The galaxy itself emerged from the Clone Wars irrevocably changed. The democratic ideals of the Republic were extinguished, replaced by the iron fist of the Galactic Empire. The promise of peace, so desperately sought, became the oppressive silence of totalitarian rule. Planetary systems, once bound by common cause, were now subjected to imperial control, their resources plundered, their freedoms curtailed. The war had exhausted the populace, making them susceptible to Palpatine's promises of order and stability, even if it meant sacrificing liberty. The vast military-industrial complex built during the war, designed to fight the Separatists, was simply repurposed to enforce imperial will. The seeds of rebellion, however, were also sown during this period, fueled by the injustices and suffering inflicted by the new regime. The emotional and psychological toll of the war was immense. Generations grew up knowing nothing but conflict, witnessing unimaginable destruction and loss. The friendships forged between Jedi and clones, the sacrifices made by ordinary citizens, and the moral compromises faced by all sides left an indelible mark on the collective consciousness of the galaxy. The Clone Wars was a brutal education, teaching hard lessons about power, manipulation, and the fragility of peace. Ultimately, the legacy of the Clone Wars is multifaceted. It was a period of immense heroism and profound tragedy. It forged heroes like Ahsoka Tano, who walked away from the Jedi to find her own path, and deepened the villainy of figures like Darth Maul, whose return added another layer of chaos. It solidified the transformation of Anakin Skywalker into Darth Vader, the ultimate symbol of the Jedi's failure and Sidious's triumph. But critically, it also created the conditions for a future rebellion. The injustices and abuses of the Empire, built upon the foundations laid during the Clone Wars, would eventually spark the flames of resistance, leading to new heroes and a renewed fight for freedom. The quiet scars of the Clone Wars lingered, shaping every conflict, every character, and every desperate hope that would arise in the decades to come, a testament to its enduring and profound impact on the entire Star Wars saga.